Okay, everybody, so we are making a handle for our mugs. Now, to do that, you need to finish everything else on the mug itself. Um, the handle is usually the last thing. The only time the handle is not the last thing is when you are making your handle part of your design. You know, some people might be making like a dolphin or a snake or butterfly wings. Those are a couple things that, some students are doing. So you might not necessarily do the handle last in that respect if that's your main detail. If you're unsure, just ask and I'll give you an idea of when to start it. Now, regardless of when you make your handle or when you attach it, you have to have a wet mug. It doesn't have to be completely flexible like this one is, because we'll start getting like a little bit sloppy on it, but you want to make sure that you are scoring and slipping to something that is still wet. Because if you don't have a good bond, that handle is going to crack around the edges. And as we can probably guess, a mug is not a mug without a handle. So that's 15 to 20% of your project grade that you can break off. Huge rule of thumb, my biggest main rule for mugs, never pick it up by the handle until it's been fired at least once. If you see cracks after the first firing, do not pick it up by the handle until it's been glazed, because the glaze can seal in some of those cracks. If your handle does break off, do not try to reattach it. Do not destroy it. You bring it to me and I will help you fix it the best that I can. Now, if your handle's in 3 or 4 pieces, it's very likely that that is not going to be able to be repaired. I've been able to repair handles that have been in 2 pieces. More than that, it's just not worth it, and you might as well just start again. You might be able to, if you added appliques, you can just cut them off of the mug itself and reattach it to a new mug. Now, this mug has a lot of problems because I just whipped it up in 3 minutes. It does not have a coil on the inside. I blended the wall here, but it's a little bit sloppy. I blended the bottom, and it's way too flimsy, but I'm just gonna have this mug here to show you how to attach the handle. Now, if you are in school, you will be able to use the extruder. Those of you that are remote, if you want a specific extruded handle, I can do my best to get you one. But I'm going to show everybody how to make a handle by hand as well, because it can come out just as nice as one that's out of the extruder. Now, these out of the extruder, we have our straight coil here, and we have one that I believe was a hexagon, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, no, pentagon, all right? Now, this pentagon one, we can actually take, now my sides turned out a little bit wonky because I was using, it was a little bit off center on the extruder. But making sure that your clay is wet, you can make these into a twisted handle. I'm also going to show you how to do this by hand as well. But you can see here, let me see if I can show you close up here. If your handle is dry and you start to twist, you're going to get cracks. When you twist, don't just twist it by the ends. You want to kind of reach down a little bit and twist. Then you want to bend it in the shape that you want it. Now you can see again, cracks. These aren't bad though. You can actually take a paintbrush after it's attached. I'm going to do this before it's attached. And you can take your brush and you can go with the design to get those cracks away. See? Not that hard. Key to this, making sure your coil is still a little bit wet. Now, I'm going to put this here for a second. I'm going to show you how to attach both of these towards the end of this demo. But just know that you want to think about what kind of handle shape you want as well. Typical handle shapes are this, half heart, a U. Some people like to do, this would look kind of cool with this flat handle here, what I call a square handle, or a Stein handle. You square it off, you trim it where it's going to attach to the mug, and you would have this squared off handle here. So that can instantly turn a mug from looking more feminine to more masculine. Okay? And again, we have our typical C shape here. The C shape, I'm not going to lie, sometimes makes your mug look a little bit immature. But if it's done really well and you really want that shape, you want to make sure that you are taking the time to make it neat and making sure it's attached really well to the mug. All right, so moving on to making it by hand. To make a mug handle by hand, which is what we had to do, oh my God, I've only had this extruder for maybe 2 years. So we've always done mugs by hand. In fact, in college, they make you, if you go to school for ceramics or, ceramics education, one of the classes you have to do is a full 4 hours of handle making or slash making up to 40 handles that you would see as, quality. So when you make that many handles, you realize it's a pretty quick process for someone that's done it a lot. Now, I've kind of edited the traditional method to making handles. Traditionally, you would hold it up by this part here and take water and, I'm going to use the word, please don't giggle too much, stroke the clay and pull it. But it looks a little bit sexualized, so I developed another method that not only reduces that giggle part, but also is easier and it's less likely that you're going to break the handle when you use this method. So, I have dunked my clay in water, and I have mushed that water into this piece of clay here. If you do not mush the water in, then your clay will be way too dry and not able to make a handle. So you want to make sure that this clay is super soft. So what I'm going to do is start to crimp this just like any other coil. I'm not going to make it too thin though. Probably going to start off with something maybe around 1 inch thick, taking my fingers from the center just to smooth a little bit before we get started with making the actual handle. All right, you don't want to make this too thin before we start this part. So now I want to make it look smooth and neat, like these other handles do here. So I'm going to take a sponge with water. I'm going to dribble it on the top of this here. Now at home, this could be a little bit tricky. Maybe do it near the kitchen sink or something so you don't get water all over your bedroom or wherever you're working. I'm wiping up some of this water. You can see I'm not going to make a huge footprint here. I like this a little bit. It's kind of hard to see. There we go. I'm not making a huge footprint here of the water itself. You can even take your sponge and kind of soak some of it back up if you use too much. And I'm going to put my sponge off to the side. Now, I'm going to use my dominant hand to do most of the work, and my opposite hand is going to hold the clay. The goal of this is to make it a squared off handle, so it's flat and flat. So if you cut this down the middle, you would look at it and it would look like a square. So, holding this in one hand, what we're going to do is press and pinch. Press flat with fingers, pinch with thumb and fingers. You can see this kind of twisted over here. If that happens, always make sure you have more clay than you think you need in case we have a little issue like that. So I'm pressing and pinching. I want the clay to be able to move, so I want to make sure that it's not stuck to the table. That way, when we're pressing and pinching, it will slide and it will bend to the shape we want and also get it to be the thickness we want. But we don't want to focus just on the one side. What you want to do when you get to about this, you've done it a couple times, you want to take the whole thing up and flip it over. We'll flip it over to the opposite side, not the next side. So I'm doing my pinch and my press. And I'm adding equal pressure, but I notice like here is too thin, so I'm not really focusing on that too much. And I want to get this to kind of match the rest of what we have here while matching it up to the thinner part. You could go very thin with this if you're careful, but that's the key. You got to be careful. Now you can see it's stuck over here. If I just pull on the one end to pick it up, it could break in half. So you want to kind of like push it with both hands and glide it up. Okay. Again, pinching and pressing and pressing and pinching. You can see I can go back and forth. I'm not adding a lot of pressure. I don't want to squish the life out of this thing. That's kind of what I did in the beginning because I pressed too hard. I'm flipping over just to make sure that this is the thickness all the way through that I want. It's a little bit chunky here, so I'm going to just press there and just pinch to match it all up. Alright? Once you think you have the thickness you like, you want to pick it up. You're going to hold this straight up and down, and you're just going to clean off the excess mud a little bit by just kind of like pulling your fingers down. All right, so we have a really nice handle here. Now, what you would do next is very important. We can't attach a piece of mud to a mug. I'm going to move these other coils real quick. What we need to do is take our handle and a tray. You're going to place your handle on its side and position it in the shape that you're going to want it on your mug. Now you can see I am not going to use all this stuff. I'm going to cut this to fit. I'm going to do our typical heart shape here. Then what I'm going to do is take my mug. This is actually a really good point of view for you guys to see this. going to gently hold my mug above my coil. And I'm going to try and show you guys. So like, see, I don't want it this long, maybe I want it this short, like that. Then when you figure out where you want it, you're going to look straight down and you're going to put little marks on here where it's going to touch the mug. Once you do that, you're going to take a carving tool or a butter knife, press down, peel that away. See, I didn't take the knife away yet, and I'm going to hold this while I just slip the knife away so I'm not changing the shape. Okay, now I would take this handle to a hair dryer and dry it for like 2 minutes, if that. I don't want to dry it too much because then I can't blend it in. So that's hand making handle, and you can see, to be honest, it kind of looks better than the ones from the extruder. At least that's my opinion. But I've also been doing this for a long time, 21 years. Oh God, 21 years. Okay, I graduated high school in 2000, so I started it like kind of before that. A little bit. But anyway, I haven't been doing this too long. But you're gonna have mistakes with this. It might not work the best way that you want, and if that happens, just crumple it up and start again. Now we need to figure out how to attach it. I'm going to use one of the extruded handles because they're a little bit drier and they'll be a little bit more successful at blending in. We're going to use this guy over here. See, it's like really stuck. So if you pick this up after hair drying and it loses its shape, put it right back on the tray and dry a little bit more. You can flip it over, but just be careful that you are not destroying the shape entirely when you're doing that. So I'm going to look down at this handle. My trim marks, probably the correct side of the knife would be a good idea. Woo. You can see it's still pretty wet. I am going to attach this handle to the mug now. Now, I like to attach my handle where I have the seam of the mug because it hides it and also strengthens this area once we add a little bit more clay. So, of course, when we attach a handle, we score and slip. You want to make sure that you are getting some good score marks on here. I don't want to see plus signs or X's. You can see I just go tap, 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 tap. I'm going to add score marks on my mug. And they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to exactly line up. But you can see I'm just kind of putting some at the top and some at the bottom here. I'm not cutting all the way through my project. Right, so there's that. I'm going to add slip to the handle itself because I feel like it's kind of, I know exactly where that's going to be. You don't have to add, actually, so I'm kind of mixing some slip over here. Okay. A little watery, but it'll work. There's a lot of teachers that believe that you don't need slip, that water works just as well. I find slip a little bit more forgiving if it has a little bit of color. So, I'm all backwards here. So I added my slip to my handle. You can see that it fills in score marks, but I am going to put up my mug. Now this is where it's going to get a little bit sloppy because this mug is still wet, and the handle is too. I'm going to press my handle into the mug. Now you can see you can put your hand on the inside of the mug like this to help to blend it. Now, problem with that being is my mug is falling apart because it is soft, way too soft. But we'll keep working with it. So I'm wiggling and pressing, wiggling and pressing. And you can see it is not fully attached yet. We need to blend this in. So I'm going to blend any part that I can kind of get to right now. But for blending a handle in, I highly recommend you use a mini coil. Now, this mini coil does not have to be score and slip because it's going to be basically paste. So I'm going to take a little bit of clay, a little bit of water, push it in, and I can just roll it in my hand like this. It should be like a worm, like that thickness. And I'm going to just wrap it around the top handle and the bottom. But I'll just show you the top right now. So you can see I kind of wrap that on there, and I want to blend this in. Now, you want to try it, if you have a twisted handle like this, you don't want to ruin the design. So you can use tools to help you blend. That popsicle stick will help, and then you go in with a wet paintbrush to smooth that the rest of the way out. Just using my hands right now. Sometimes your hands are your best tools, you know, especially when you're trying to support it, and you need to angle and get little cracks and crevices that you might not be able to reach easily. So I'm supporting the handle here where I kind of blend up into the mug. If you don't add clay to this and you try to blend it in, what's going to happen is your handle's going to get really thin where you have attached it. So if I just tried blending in this one here without extra clay, you're going to see, I'm going to show you here. This is kind of like what not to do. You want to add that extra clay, one, so it's more stable, and two, so you don't end up with a really thin end here. So you can see it gets thinner as we do that, unless we add a little bit of oil. Now that we've blended that top part in, you want to blend both in first before you do this. Use your paintbrush. You're going to go with your design back and forth, supporting the opposite side of the mug. Again, this is not going to look as nice as it could because I did not take the time to make my mug itself neat and a little bit stiffer. A little older, it's just stubborn. Okay. I find my hands and the paintbrush to be one of my most valuable tools in here. And you can see you can get that blended fairly well. I think I blended too much right there. I would probably not blend that much because I lose my design at the end there. You can bring it back out again by getting a smaller brush and kind of like pulling against that edge to sharpen it back up again. All right, so my handle is attached to this mug that's absolutely falling apart. But you can see how it's attached at the top here. One second. All right, you can see that there's no gaps for the most part on the top of that handle there. You can see at the bottom, that's a bit of a hot mess because we didn't add the coil. So you want to make sure that you're getting that coil on there. It should not be super thick up there. You saw that tiny little coil that I added. Now, once you're done adding your handle, it might be a really good idea for you to just kind of hair dry where these joints meet. So like right here and here. And also you don't want to do this. I would probably add a little bit of clay here. It's just because it's pulling on it so hard because it's wet. You can see how thin that edge is. I would take another little noodle or snake, score and slip if I have to, but this can probably be blended as long as it's soft enough. Okay. So that is making a handle and attaching a handle. So we can make it by hand, and again, it would look pretty darn good, if not better than extruder. So don't hesitate. Those of you that are full remote, if you really want one from the extruder, you gotta let me know, and you gotta be patient with the amount of time it's gonna take for me to get it to you. But I can absolutely help with that. But you can try out yourself, handle first. And those of you coming into school, you can try it by hand as well. That's it.